Welcome, everyone. We'll get started. And I like to start by, if you want to, put yourself on gallery view and just take a moment to look around at all of the faces and people from all over. You can stick into the chat box where you're calling in from. And we have a whole new group of people today because this is a sort of special mindfulness event. So feel free to look around and wave and just say hello. I see children. I see all sorts of old friends, many new. Nice to see you all. Okay. So we will get started now more formally. Welcome, everyone, to our Thursday Mindful Awareness Meditation. I'm Diana Winston, and I'm the Director of Mindfulness Education at the Mindful Awareness Research Center. So happy to be here with all of you, especially today, as we come to practice together in this very challenging, uncertain moment. And it's a time that we really, really need to meditate. So I'm so glad you've joined us from wherever you are. And my hope today is that this practice that we do together will prove to be nurturing and supportive and give you some skills and tools for calming down, connecting with yourself, and just being present right now. Um, so I teach mindfulness practice, and mindfulness is paying attention to our present moment experiences with openness and curiosity and a willingness to be with what is, to be with that experience. And really, we're talking about how do we show up for ourselves? How do we live more in the present, not lost in the past, not lost in the future? So I just want to acknowledge again, if you're having feelings of anxiety, uncertainty, fear, catastrophizing thoughts, worry, sadness, grief, disappointment, expectations, what if they're not met? You're completely normal. This is how pretty much everyone is feeling right now. And, it's a tumultuous time. And so, this practice of mindfulness and other meditative practices can help us connect with ourselves and find within us this reservoir of wholeness, of resiliency, a place of stability inside us, sort of like the eye at the center of a storm. So even though it's very stormy and there's so much going on, we can find that place of ease and well being inside ourselves in spite of the circumstances. And this is not easy to do. And it really takes time and practice to have that ability. But we all have the capacity to have the resiliency inside ourselves, no matter what's happening out there. So, in this time of great confusion and turmoil in the United States, and I know there are people here from other countries, we need these practices more than ever. We need a place to come back to within ourselves that can be resilient, stable, equanimous, meaning even minded and balanced in the face of whatever is happening. And so today we're going to do a practice where where we'll practice getting grounded, and grounded just meaning centered, like stable. And we'll use the image of the ground to help us. And then we'll do some mindfulness practice, and then we'll explore a little more around resiliency. So I just invite you to settle back in a way that is comfortable, settled wherever you are on the chair, couch, bed, cushion on the floor. And you can have your back upright, just elongating your spine a little bit, but not too rigid or tight. Your hands resting wherever they're comfortable. And your eyes can be closed, although there are some people who prefer to open their eyes when they meditate. It's absolutely fine. Whatever is going to work for you is fine. So let's take a few deep breaths. And as we take these deep breaths, allow ourselves to settle some. Whatever has been preoccupying us, all of the media, all of the waiting, all of the strong emotions, see if we can just return right now to this present moment. Just come back with a few breaths. And now let's feel our feet on the floor. And begin by really just feeling the obvious sensations. What do you notice when you make contact with your feet on the floor? There's hardness, coolness, warmth. There might be some movement, some tingling, pressure. So just notice the actual felt experience of your feet contacting the floor and what that is like. Just feeling, sensing. Let your belly be soft. And notice that your feet are touching the ground. And the ground, of course, may be many stories below you. But our feet are in some way connected to the earth. And you also might notice your thighs, your seat. Maybe you're being cradled by the seat of a chair or on a cushion. Can you feel that connection in the lower part of your body to the ground? To the ground. So know that you are held by the ground. The ground is supporting you. So really feel both the actual connection and then a sense. See if you can sense the earth below you. And just feel it holding you, that this earth, so much happens to our earth. And the earth kind of takes it, for better or for worse, but just this capacity to hold and to sustain. That all of life comes from our earth, including us. And we can feel that connection to this ground supporting us in this time when we need to be grounded and centered, stable in body and mind. Soften your belly, rest. Letting any challenges you might be having, you might have a sense of them almost melting into the ground. And as you inhale, taking in the nourishment, strength, stability, holding of this earth. So if you want to continue sensing the ground, you can. If you want to shift into the mindfulness practice, I just invite you to find your breath in your body. So bringing your attention up to your breath. Can you notice your abdomen rising and falling, expanding and contracting with each breath? Or your chest rising and falling, expanding and contracting with each breath. Or maybe you notice the air moving through your nose, tingling, warmth, coolness, slight movement. Let your breath be natural, moving in its own natural rhythm, in and out through your nose. Our body is breathing without us having to do anything. Now turn your attention to the sounds for a moment. There might be sounds in the room you're in or outside the room. The sounds are coming and going. Just listen. Listen to the sounds without getting lost in a story about the sound, what it is. I like it, don't like it. Just listen. And now let's find a focus to our meditation. Our breath in our abdomen or chest or nose, or listening to the sounds. Or if you liked continuing with the ground meditation from the beginning, feeling the sensations in your feet, sensing the earth below. But something that we can come back to, something in this present moment, so that when our mind goes into the what ifs and the worries and the ruminations, we can always come back to this present moment, right here, right now. So choose your focus. They all work equally well, so just choose whatever is most compelling or clearest. And we'll do this simple mindfulness practice, simple but not easy, of noticing our present moment experience, breath after breath, or sound after sound, or sensation after sensation. One breath ends, and the next breath begins. And we do this, we might find that our attention wanders. If this happens, you're not doing anything wrong. It's normal. It's what minds do. When you notice your attention wanders into plans or worries or ruminations, imagining worst case scenario, notice that's happened. You can say thinking softly in your mind. Just say the word thinking and bring your attention back to whatever it was that you were focusing on. And just keep coming back again and again. Solidity, support, strength. And if emotions come, you might have a strong emotion arising that seems really, really obvious, really clear. Then turn your attention to it and include it. Bring it into your awareness. Notice, feel, sense. And can you hold yourself in compassion for whatever you might be feeling? We're all having a lot of feelings right now, or many of us are. So let that be part of the meditation too. You don't have to exclude. Let's try some silence now as we practice on our own for a little bit. As we continue meditating, you can notice how we're feeling in this moment. I just want to offer a practice for resiliency, for balance. So I'd just like you to bring to mind a time in your life when you felt really even minded, balanced, resilient, or capable. A time where you felt like I could handle this. I was okay. Even though things might have been difficult, I could handle it. This could be something small or something big, it doesn't matter. But let yourself bring to mind, when was there a time where I exhibited some resiliency, some balance, this sense of being able to handle. And as you remember that time, try to remember what it felt like. And if you can't come up with anything, just you can imagine, what would it feel like? What did it feel like when I could be resilient, had capacity? So try to remember the place and time and what I felt in my body. See if you can feel it now. Maybe this spaciousness, strength, openness, stability, calm. Really let it be here. And you might even use some words to remind you more about how it felt, like, I could handle this. I could be with things as they were. I was capable. And now let's imagine that whatever we're feeling, really let yourself feel it, let it be here. Imagine taking this feeling with you into the next several days, weeks, months, as we face whatever the world, the election, world events, all of the many things that challenge us, as we face what comes to us in the future. Just imagine meeting it with this quality. So use your imagination. You can just sense or feel, might see, hear. I can be with things as they are. I have strength, capacity, stability, capability. And notice what happens as you imagine this future, carrying these qualities with you. Into the future. May I be with things as they are. You can say these words or find your own words. May I know I can handle this. May I trust in myself. and this deep reservoir that we all carry of well-being that's inside us that you may be touching right in this moment. And we don't have to do this alone. You can have a sense right now of all of the people in this room, the people outside who are listening and practicing along with us, cultivating qualities of resiliency and strength, capacity to handle whatever life brings. To fight for what's right and just and fair from a place of wisdom and compassion. And so feeling your feet on the ground and the last moment reconnecting with that earth, that ground that we did in the beginning, softening your belly, being wherever you are with kindness, with compassion. So may our world, may this country, may the inhabitants of this country find peace and reconciliation and compassion. May all of us find this deep source of well-being. You can notice your feet on the ground, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes or end the meditation. So I hope this is helpful for you in these coming days and weeks. And if you're new to mindfulness, I encourage you to learn more about it through the resources at our Mindful Awareness Research Center. And we'll post the link in the chat or the resources. Anyway, our app, we have an app, UCLA Mindful. All of these meditations are posted on that app, so you can come back and listen to it again if you want to. And I said I would stay now for the next 30 minutes or however long it goes, because I'm happy to keep talking about how we can use our practice as things move forward. Right. So I'll stay on, but it's optional. If you want to leave, that's fine. If you want to stay, I'll be having a chat about mindfulness and the current climate and how we can practice during these times. So the recording is available on the UCLA MARC website and in our app. It will be available in by another day or two. And also our app, UCLA Mindful. And that's getting posted in the chat. So when we do so I'm going to take a moment to pause. Someone wrote, "Thanks, Diana. Now back to CNN." Just joking. It's okay. We all want to know. And so the chat, just for today, because there's a lot of people, I'm going to take questions or comments via the chat and not in person. So sometimes that we go on screen, but today I'm not going to do that, just by the chat. And I may not get to all of the comments or questions, but we'll see what kind of conversation we want to have right now. So I'll open it up. Right away, we got a great question. How do you recommend we deal with anger? Okay, so I think there's some kind of notion about anger that anger is like, oh no, we shouldn't have anger. If I'm a meditator, it's not a good idea. But actually, anger is a very natural and appropriate response. It's a response to perceived injustice. something happens that's not fair. There's an injustice to it's happening to us, it's happening to someone we love, it's happening to our community, it's happening to the world. We have an anger response. That there's an automatic like anger that arises within us. So it's an appropriate response. But what happens is it tends to get all tangled up with a lot of reactivity. And that reactivity is I'm so angry I can't see it. It leads to hurting people. It can be very, very harmful to ourselves and others. So what I find with my mindfulness practice is how do I access the wisdom, the righteousness, right? That sees clearly in the anger, but remove it from the reactivity. And this is not easy to do. It takes a lot of mindfulness, right? It takes a lot of mindfulness, but we can be present with our anger, allowing it to arise without acting on it, being really present to the sensations in our body and our belly and our heart. I mean, we can be very, very present in the midst of anger, allow it to move through us and still stay connected to the energy, the urge of justice. But it's not easy to do. So it's kind of a long term practice process. Okay. Do you think it's important to maintain a relatively positive view of humanity rather than get too pessimistic, which I think is where you tend to go? Um, well, here's what I'll say. If we live our lives in pessimism, we're pretty miserable most of the time. If we live our lives with optimism, it generally feels better. But the caveat is not to be Pollyannish about it, like a false optimism, or it's like, how do we stay authentic and grounded, but not go into those darker places where the pessimism kind of takes over? So I hold a very, very optimistic and sort of beneficent view of humans and humanity. Like that's just my worldview, and I trust in the inner goodness in all of us. And I know that there are many people who who don't manifest inner goodness, or it's very obscured. And of course, there is psychopathology and all of that. But my general belief goes towards optimism because I feel like it is like a saner and healthier way to be in the world. Any practice to recommend for sleeplessness? You're not sleeping now? Really? That's so surprising. I think nearly everyone I've talked to this week has said they haven't been able to sleep. Okay, so we have an audio on our website, on the UCLA MARC website, that is a one geared for falling asleep and for helping you go back to sleep. So that's one thing you can do. You can also, it's just called like mindfulness for sleep. You can, and I did it, actually, I did a mindfulness and sleep a few weeks ago or even a month ago. You can look on the app or on our website because I specifically dealt with that topic. And so in the very short version of what I'll say right now is um, using mindfulness to deal with the racing thoughts is extremely helpful in the middle of the night. So coming back into your body, noticing what you're feeling. So when we're having like racing thoughts, there's often emotions happening inside our body that we're a little tuned out of, and we're mostly thinking about all these thoughts. So if we can bring our attention into our bodies and bring some awareness and some compassion, I often, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I just put my hand on my chest and I just say, it's okay, you'll get through this. And my biggest thing I say is never believe anything you think in the middle of the night. It is always distorted. It's always confused because our minds are tired. We don't have our usual like wisdom in the middle of the night. So that's a little bit of how to go on that. Any advice on how to help a stressed young teenager worried about the world? That's a great question, Lynn. And I feel like I can't really do it justice without thinking about it a little bit more. So maybe send me an email and you can do it through our website and I'll think a little bit more and give you something more to go on. Someone visiting from Arizona, someone from Arizona visiting today. I'm grateful for this. Anger is helpful. Someone was mentioning anger is helpful and has helped me understand the severe wrongs done to me, right? So that was what we were talking about earlier, how not to disregard anger, but how to work with it skillfully. Any thoughts about how to deal with people who voted for the wrong candidate? Guess what? Everybody, I mean, you think they voted for the wrong candidate, they think you voted for the wrong candidate. It's the way it goes, right? Um, this is a really hard practice right now, and especially in this moment where we're at this thing where, like, where first of all, we see how utterly divided the country is. It's not completely in half, but it's there. It feels like two totally different worldviews and not a lot of understanding. And I do think that trying to practice like respect and kindness, even though we may think that that person has views that are just like the wrong view, it's really important to try to understand why people are believing what they believe. And when we understand that, we can have a little bit more compassion. And it doesn't mean we have to agree, but we can soften our hearts a little bit and have a little bit of like a little bit more ability to agree to disagree. Because, I think you've looked at, most of us have seen the research, like we can't, it's very hard to change people's minds, right? Because people vote from, not from logic, but from their heart. And I think we live in a country where there's very different views. And so, how do we not demonize each other? And how do we try to understand and then maybe find the places that are common? Like, I think, it's like everybody wants their children to be safe. Everybody believes in like want to be healthy, right? But people just have very different views about how we think that is accomplished. And so we probably disagree with how someone else thinks it's accomplished, but at least we can understand like the core needs that people have, and maybe that's where there might be some ground. So thank you for asking that question. It's a really important one, and I'm not the like, be all end all about that question. All of this is so wearing. How do we cope with feeling so tired and exhausted from all of this? Because there seems no end date. Yeah. So self-care, self-care. What are you doing to nurture yourself, to take care of yourself? Media fasts. I had a family member who was just like, I am overwhelming myself with doom scrolling, shut it down, and hasn't looked at the media. Well, started yesterday, of course, for Tuesday, but for 2 weeks prior to the election, did not look at it and said, tell me if there's anything important I should know, but otherwise, don't want to know right now. So, how do we titrate? How do we give ourselves um, so I'm talking about like the media and like how much we use the media and how, because that is part of what can be so exhausting. But then what do we do that fills us up? What nurtures us? And it doesn't matter what it is. It could be mindfulness. Hooray. I love, obviously that's my thing, but maybe it's taking a walk in nature. Maybe it's a phone call with a friend. Maybe it's a hot bath. Maybe it is, doing an altruistic act. Maybe like, what is it that fills you up? Because we are so tired and so exhausted, and it does feel like, and there isn't an end in sight. And that's where we have to also go back to these practices, right? That we've been talking about, like finding my inner resiliency, finding my inner reservoir of peace, of well-being. Okay, I'm not going to answer every single question. I'm just going to do some. So I'm going to rephrase this one question. How can we feel inner stability if the other candidate wins, whoever your candidate is? And I know there's probably a general feeling for the people who attend my meditation group, but how do we feel inner stability when things really don't go our way? This is life. This is it. Like, this is why we practice. This is why I practice. So I can find that ground inside me that can be okay no matter what the conditions are of life. If the candidate I don't want to win wins, I can still be okay in a deep way inside. And I can use my ongoing commitment to truth and justice and the work that I want to do to fight for what I believe in and not give up and not say, oh, well, it's over, right? But it doesn't have to disturb this inner sense of well being. It really doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that's easy to do. And that's not, I'm also not saying that we need to pretend like if the other side, whatever your other side is, wins, we will be profoundly disappointed. We will have grief, we will have rage, we will have, and the other side's going to have that if the other side wins. So have those feelings, use your mindfulness to work with the feelings and keep coming back to this capacity, to this reservoir that we all have. It's possible. It really is possible. And then out of that comes wise action, acting in ways to move things in the direction that you dream of, that we vision together. Okay. So someone was kind of pointing to this, feeling disappointed in humanity and saddened by that. I feel like no one really wants to discuss negative feelings, so we stuff it away, and people are not very supportive when it seems most needed. Yeah, I think in some circles of that, maybe circles many of us are in, there's this sense of like, certain feelings are not okay. I don't want to see that you're sad, or I don't want to see that you're angry. And I think finding the support of people who say, no, no, however you show up is okay. Like, I'm willing to be here with you, even when you're the most disappointed. I'm willing to be here with you when you're angry and frustrated. I'm willing to be here with you when you're really scared. And those people, we have to look for that in our lives and find that in ourselves. And that's what the mindfulness practice is about, in my opinion. Like it really gives us the capacity to hold ourselves with kindness in the face of our fear, disappointment, anger, irritation, grief. That's what we got to start here. And then we got to have it reflected to us because it's absolutely important. Oh, I use the expression Pollyanna-ish. I'm sorry if someone didn't understand that. Meaning Pollyanna was like that old book and movie, this girl who only saw things through rose-colored glasses. Like everything was perfect all the time. And it's like false, right? Oh, I understand people got shut out of the session. So I'm going to talk to the Hammer and we're going to figure out a way to make it available. I think we can do that either through the MARC. We can do that quite easily through the MARC website or through the Hammer website, but we'll check in about that. Okay, sorry about that. I think none of us realized that there was a cap in the amount of people allowed in this room. Thank you. You like the painting behind me? That's my daughter's painting. I want to show off her work. Okay, she's 11. Okay, let me just look around. Here's a question. Please define wisdom and its relationship to mindfulness meditation. Okay, so sometimes mindfulness is called insight meditation because it fosters wisdom. And there's a couple of ways of thinking about this. It's like first of all, I think of wisdom as something that's inherent inside us. It's not like knowledge is, something you read in a book, it comes at you. But wisdom it's like the body's knowing and it comes out of us. And the way that we access that wisdom is through calming and stabilizing our minds so that we can see clearly. So I'm going to give you a little example because I just happen to have it here on my desk, which is a snow globe. So imagine that this is your mind ruminating, worrying, freaking out, thinking out like our minds are churned up constantly, right? So with mindfulness, if we practice doing some meditation and we begin to calm our mind, and I'm going to put this down because it's going to take a while, but that snow is going to fall to the ground. And ultimately, I'll show it to you in a little bit, ultimately, it will be it'll be clear, like we can see through. And so when we learn how to disentangle from all of the activity, the kind of frantic, ceaseless frenzy of our mind, and come to a place of calm and stability, the our natural wisdom begins to shine through. It just starts to emerge it's just a very organic process. And I think some of you have found the experience of you're meditating and your mind gets calm and still, and you have some insight into something. So this is why it's a practice, not just for stress reduction, but it's also a practice that can bring access to a deeper knowing and wisdom inside us. Okay, there's a lot of questions. So I'm just sort of picking and choosing at this point. Yeah. So people were asking several questions related to grief and sorrow. Um, how do we deal with the sorrow that comes at the prospect of a terrible world ahead? From a mindfulness perspective, it's the same, whatever the emotion is, that we learn to hold the emotion with compassion, with awareness. So when we're feeling grief or when we're mourning, like one thing just to back up is not to try to discount it or like skip over the grief, or I'm so disappointed, or the world didn't turn out the way I wanted, or, which is a tendency. I'm going to close the door. Hold on one second. If you're not from LA, you don't know this, but there are leaf blowers all the time. Anyways, so so honoring that grief, like it's when if we are disappointed, and that may be the outcome, and of course there's somebody who's going to be disappointed one way or the other, letting that grief be there, feeling it, sensing it, noticing what's happening in your body, bringing mindfulness to it and making space for it, and offering yourself compassion. And it's a very intense practice to hold yourself in grief. But just like a child, like, when a child is crying and crying, we don't say to the child, stop. Well, I mean, sometimes we do, but we try not to. In our best parenting moments, we don't say, stop crying, there's something wrong with you, or we don't try to like figure out why are you crying, stop crying, and let me fix it. And I think the healthiest thing that I try to do is just allow them to be there in their grief. And so we can allow ourselves to be there with mindfulness and compassion in our grief, and allow a collective mourning, because it's not just our grief, it's like the planet's grief, and hold that too with our awareness. And once again, come back into this fundamental well-being, this natural awareness, this capacity within us. We can make it through this. We absolutely can. Okay, so I'll take a couple more, and then I'm going to stop. Someone was asking the question, oh, hi, Jessica, about opening ourselves to deal with difference in terms of social and cultural difference. There's interesting practices around that. I think you probably know this, but I'll just say that there's been some research looking at mindfulness and its impact on implicit bias. So there was a couple of studies done around this where we looked, not me personally, but the scientists looked at, there's a test you can take for implicit bias, that sort of blind spots where you make assumptions about people and you don't even know you've made those assumptions. And so they did it, I think, around age and weight bias. And they had people learn to meditate. And then they went back and redid the tests, and people had less of that implicit bias, less of the blind spots, more self-awareness. So mindfulness can help. Mindfulness just in general can help with opening to the ways that we make separations and distance from each other, and can help, I think, in the long run. I mean, there's much more research to be done around how mindfulness might impact racism, classism, homophobia, and so forth. Okay. Okay, so here's a question that's come at me a couple times. I now know that half the country has voted in favor of injustice. Okay, so this is this person's opinion in favor of dishonesty, honesty, and I can't imagine living in that world. I wake up at night figuring out how. Uh, essentially, lots of strong, heavy, intense emotion. So I'm going to say, Deborah, please seek out some support like right away if you're having anything that moves into those really, really kind of intense things, intense self-harm feelings, because you can get support. You are not alone. We will mindfulness is a great tool, but if we're really like over that edge of like extreme fear, extreme depression, we need support, and we need to get community, we need to get counseling, we need so I'm just going to say, for anybody who this not maybe being touched by the meditation practice, or to seek out the support that you need. Okay. So there's so many more questions, and I think is all right. Here's what I'm going to say. If there's anybody, I'm going to go to the very bottom because there's just way too many. If there's like a burning question that you're like, I have, and here somebody's putting a bunch of therapeutic referrals on here, so that's great. Thank you for doing that. Um, and yeah, thank you for putting those out, everyone. I'm just going to go to the bottom and say I'll take like 2 or 3 more questions, and they're like the burning ones that you just can't live without or something. Okay, I have 3. Here we go. How to deal with being told that we care too much. You know, caring too much, it's obviously a matter of perspective, and I think it means that you are a deeply compassionate person, and the person who said that you care too much finds it hard to, for whatever reason, has some reaction, like maybe feels like you care too much, or it's, like, so I think it's important for you to measure and sense, like, inside myself, am I caring too much? Okay, actually, no, this feels like really authentic and who I am. And then maybe a little distancing from that person who might be saying that you care too much, because it's not affirming you. And there are others who will look at that as just a depth of compassion. Oh, this is different. They're told that, so you're asking, or if they say that you're too political. It's hard to say. I think that you are. It might be helpful to find supportive people who are aligned with you. Jerry wrote, I'm trying to regard my sadness for the country as a gift, because that means that I have the capacity for empathy, compassion, and action. And we know that not all beings have this gift. That's beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Our sadness is this manifestation of our capacity for empathy and compassion and action. So I think I got all to the bottom of this. Oh, one more. How to deal with the loss of control, sense of life. Sorry. How to deal with a loss of sense of control of your life during this time of uncertainty. Um, Guess what? We never really had control in the first place. That's the illusion, that we had control. So this is just showing us more deeply the reality of life. And we approach it with humor, with humility, with, okay, I don't have control. And now I'm going to find out where I do have agency. And where I do have agency is my relationship to all of this, my relationship. Like, how do I relate to the absence of control? And it's doable. Like, I'm just going back to the very, very beginning, which was finding our ground, finding that place of well-being inside us, finding our resiliency no matter what the world brings. And we're in for a ride, people. So so just hold on and use your practices, and you will we will get through this. We will. So thank you, everybody. We'll put the links to the centers at the and the app in for the last time, and I think we will. I'll see you. I won't be here next week, but I will be here the following week. Allison will be here next week. Okay. Thanks, everyone.